to the end zone. Caught. Touchdown.
Welcome to the Straight Outta WAC Pigskin Podcast, the last show for the regular season. I'm your boy, The Rev. The nice thing about Sam Houston leaving, I didn't think about this last week, is that I can cut a new intro and get rid of all the Sam highlights and have to watch that last play of Alpine Woods. So, there's another high point to Sam Houston leaving for Conference USA. So anyways, welcome to the show. We're going to go over last week, some really exciting games in the WAC, games this week. Also, any questions y'all have about anything WAC or FCS related. You might notice that the logo is a little different up at the top of the screen. So the boys who run the B Team podcast for South Dakota State, they're SDSU alumni. I'm an SFA alumni. Our teams played in basketball on Sunday in what was a great mid-major match. So we had a bet on the loser had to put a sign of the winner's choice up during their podcast. Unfortunately, my house is an old, Victorian 1885 house, and the walls aren't exactly the best for hanging stuff up. So I said I'd put the logo up instead where the Straight Outta WAC podcast logo went. So there it is. It is kind of small, so we'll just go ahead and put that right up there as well. So here you go, Ben and Brendan. This one's for you. Here's your logo. Your Jacks were better than my Jacks, so congratulations on the win. We just get rid of that. So anyway, let's talk about the WAC last week. So lots of good games that happened. Let's go through it real quick. Abilene Christian hosted Tarleton, beat them 29-3, and not a surprising victory. Abilene Christian's not a bad team. They've had a rough year this year. Adam Dorrell's been working hard to grow that program. I still say give them a couple of years, and they'll be in a much better space. What's interesting about that is that Tarleton actually outgained Abilene Christian in terms of total yards. They actually had a much more balanced game, but the Abilene Christian's defense was top notch by forcing 6 turnovers in their game. So, Abilene Christian has the potential to, they're 5-5 right now. I don't think they'll go 6-5 because of who they have to play next week, but still a better year than probably what a lot of people expected out of Abilene Christian. So good job there. And what was one of the games of the week, Eastern Kentucky went to Sam Houston. And this one really was important because if Sam wins, they gained the AQ7 auto bid. And obviously they won 42-28. And that score is a lot closer than the game actually was. Sam was up 21-0 at the half. And then Eastern Kentucky turned it on second half, scored 28 points, but still wasn't enough to catch up. Eric Schmidt had a great game, went for 392 yards and 3 touchdowns. Ramon Jefferson and all the weapons they all had a great days. What kind of surprised me looking at the stats, Eastern Kentucky is a passing team, but Sam Houston only held them to 30 yards rushing, which is, that Sam Houston, I've said that front 7 is the best in the FCS, and I still stand by that. It's kind of surprising to me that they actually gave up 28 points in the second half. I don't think that's an indicator of anything to come. I just think that, Eastern Kentucky played a heck of a game. So So I'm going to get to these comments in a second, and then because I see them already, and Brandon Owens, I'm going to ignore yours. Jacksonville State traveled to Beaumont, beat Lamar. Not a surprise there. I think if Jacksonville State had actually lost to Lamar, everybody else would be shocked. But Jacksonville State, they're just an interesting sort of Jekyll and Hyde team. You don't know what you're going to get out of them. It's kind of sad because I thought they would have made waves into the playoffs this year, but with the changes that are happening there, with John Gross stepping down at the end of the year and then getting in a great new coach, I think they're going to be poised to do good things in Conference USA. So there, Brandon, I said something nice about your team, you jerk. Let's see. The other game of the week, another one was really important. Stephen F. Austin had to go to Conway, and they beat Central Arkansas 27-14. Why this game was huge, really, it's playoff implications, right? SFA has to win out completely to even sniff a chance at an at-large bid. And even then, they're still on the bubble. We'll get to more playoff stuff later, but SFA they had a day against UCA. Had over 227 rushing yards, 261 passing yards. Xavier Gibson basically just went nuts. First play, Self went to Gibson for a 73-yard strike on a screen pass. And it was just all it was mainly SFA from there. UCA did have a 14-10 lead at one point, but then they were just completely shut out in the second half. Xavier Gibson had 3 touchdowns. Great game. Chris Campos had a great game kicking for the Jacks. So this is a win that SFA absolutely needed to even consider getting into the playoff. Then last but not least, Dixie State, they got their first win of the year. Congrats to the Trailblazers, although it wasn't against a Division I team. They played Fort Lewis. But you know what? They got a win. It's not like they're having to worry about playoff or anything like that. They got a dub. Good job, Blazers, especially because you have a rough game next week. But like I said, they got to win. They played the toughest schedule of anybody. They should have the number one strength of schedule in FCS because of what they've done this year. So great job again to the Blazers. So let's look at the games this week. Last week of the regular season, we have some fun ones. Sam Houston's going to travel up to Abilene, play Abilene Christian. That game kicks off at I think at noon or 1 o'clock. I think it's 1 o'clock actually. So that, at this point, Sam Houston, they've locked up a top 2 seed. It kind of is up to Montana State and what the committee thinks of Montana State, especially to beat Montana, see if it's a 1 or a 2. We'll get to that. But, I don't think Abilene Christian has the depth to beat them. But also Sam Houston can't be complacent. Yes, they've made the playoffs, but they want the best seed possible. I don't see Coach Keeler saying to the team, hey, take a week off. He'll come out with wanting to win. They'll treat it to have, we're going to have to get 1-0 each week. So I think Sam Houston will win that one big. Stephen F. Austin travels to Beaumont to play Lamar. Honestly, SFA needs to win this game by 60 points to help pad their playoff opportunities. Lamar's pretty bad. They could do it. But they have to be impressive, I think, to sway the committee. Central Arkansas is going to travel to Stephenville, face Tarleton State. Central Arkansas, I think, can probably get this win. Tarleton's not a bad team, though. That's the thing. Yes, they did get completely owned by Abilene Christian last week, and UCA owned Abilene Christian a few weeks ago. But Tarleton, I think they're going to raise some eyebrows over the next few years. But I think UCA gets that win. And then lastly, Dixie State is playing Missouri State. It would be amazing if Dixie State upset Missouri State, just for the fun that would happen. But I don't think that's going to happen. I think Dixie State's going to end the year 1-10. But hey, it's your first year at Division I. You put together a big boy schedule, and you learned a lot. You got a lot of experience out of those games. So let's see what happens there. So all right, so I'm going through the comments right here. Yeah, sorry, Brendan. I know it's rude. By the way, it looked cold on your podcast today. I saw you guys in hoodies and stuff. I don't want to brag, but I was out by the pool today, chilling out, enjoying the 80-degree temperatures here. But that's because I don't live in a freezer. Not UCA, apparently. Right, Will? Let's go to this one right here. How's Incarnate Word looking? Is Eric Morris gonna kind of coach it down the line? I don't know. It's interesting about Incarnate Word. They've had a great year this year. I think they're going to come to the WAC and they're going to immediately be competitive. Probably one of the top 2 or 3 programs in the WAC. They've been built. I will say this as a Southland fan, I wasn't impressed necessarily with their facilities, but they do have a lot of money. They're upgrading them, but they've year over year they have built up a program and they've improved. And so Morris could get poached somewhere. I don't know. He's right for it at this point, but I don't know. I would probably give him one more year. I think he has to have I think Incarnate Word needs another awesome year like they've had this year for him to go. But I mean, a lot of folks in the Southland weren't happy about them because of facilities and because or people who left the Southland weren't necessarily happy about them because of facilities and things like that. But they have shown the commitment that they want to grow. So let's see what they do. Brandon, thanks for the love as always. I just hoping JSU gets a winning record at this point. I just want to enjoy it now because I don't know if you'll get it. Another great question from Jason. Is Adam Dorrell going to be after this weekend? Sounds like he thinks there's a few more years. That's such a. I mean, he's been the coach now for what? 3 years, 4 years, maybe 5. If it's that long, then yeah, I think you have to look at it and potentially have to let him go. I feel like every year they've shown improvement. They haven't gone to the next level that they need to. I think he'd probably get one more year. I mean, if Abilene Christian could have upset Sam Houston, he'd definitely get one more year. But I think they'd give him one more year before they let him go. But I mean, we'll see what happens with it. That's a hard school to recruit for. And then now, I mean, but they also have a new stadium. They have great facilities. It should be easier than it previously was. So I would give him one more year and see what he does before I let him go or not. But that's just me. Charles, 18 bad people, and then okay, all right, settle down. Also, I'll point out another thing about Brendan. This is a great thing, and I'm going to have this on public record. I made a bet with him that if the Jacks won, he had to pay my bar tab in Frisco. So technically, the Jacks did win, and so Brendan, let's just say we're going top shelf in Frisco, my friend. Looking forward to it. No, I'm kidding. I wouldn't. It was it's a fun joke, but no. So congrats again back to the B Team boys for winning our bets. Sorry I ripped up your sign, but whatever. I did get a question on Twitter earlier. I'm gonna bring up somebody asked with sports. So there's an account called Sports of SHSU. So it's the Sam Houston Sports account. They're a pretty good follow. I would recommend giving them a follow if you want to know about all things Sam Houston. And they actually aren't they're pretty mellow and they're not necessarily full of Sam Houston bias whenever you talk to them and tweet at them and stuff like that. So I definitely enjoy following them. But that's the question I said with Sam Houston leaving, will SFA become the favorite in the WAC? And my response was, I think honestly, SFA becomes the favorite in the WAC next year. Now, some people are going to say, wow, are you serious? And yes, I am, because if you look at Sam Houston, amazing team, but look how many seniors they have. They're going to lose Jaquez Ezard. He's done. I mean, Eric Schmidt, more than likely, I'd be very shocked if Eric Schmidt doesn't enter the transfer portal at this point, and go to an FBS squad and get some of that NIL money on top of it. They lose a lot of folks on their defense, like Jahari K, I believe, is a senior. Some of the other ones in the front seven. I think the McCollum, I can't remember McCollum was a junior senior. I want to say Zion McCollum's senior too, but they lose a lot of folks on that team. And while Keeler has been great about rebuilding and stuff, that team has been so put together that losing folks on there, I think, is going to be a little bit of a letdown to them. And with what SFA is built, improving year over year, I think it would be easy to say that SFA would be the favorite next year and could be the favorite going forward in the WAC. Of course, that also depends too on how long Stephen F. Austin stays in the WAC. They could always move at some point as well. I guess we'll see what happens, what the future holds. I don't think the dominoes are done falling when it comes to realignment. So You never know. But I would say that right now, it would be SFA or Sam next year, and then after Sam leaves, it would be SFA or maybe Incarnate Word. Incarnate Word's the same thing. They're building up their program, like I said. So one other thing touch on real quick is playoff stuff, because I should have put in that Jim Mora playoffs clip in here. I'm not going to go back and edit it for anybody who watches it later. Let's just say it's there. You got a number 1 or number 2 seed. You've got a number 1 or number 2 seed. Let me say that one more time. You have got a number 1 or a number 2 seed, and it doesn't matter which one you get. Okay. And here's why: because you're going to have home field advantage all the way until Frisco, and y'all don't lose at Bowers. It would be, it would, if it happens to be the time, right? So you're going to, like I said, you're either going to get number 1 or number 2. The reason why I still say either is because Montana State, if they win the Brawl of the Wild, which they probably will, they're going to have 10 FCS wins. They have 1 FBS loss to Wyoming, which isn't going to count against them, and they have a better resume than Sam Houston with 10 wins. And Sam Houston will have 10 FCS wins as well. But with them beating Eastern Washington, with them beating Montana, with them just blowing through the Big Sky, they're going to have a great resume. It's going to be really hard, really, really hard to not give Montana State a number 1 seed based upon what they've done this year. So that's going to be a tough one for the committee. But either way, let's say Sam doesn't get a number 1 seed. Let's say they get a number 2 seed. There's going to be some folks crying about it. Don't cry about it. You're still a top 2 seed. You still get home field advantage. You get what you want to get to Frisco, right? It doesn't matter. And yes, you might end up having to play JMU, but hey, you beat JMU last year in the spring, and JMU I don't think they have the team that would beat you this year. So when Selection Sunday happens, don't get upset if you don't get a top 2 seed. Okay. The other playoff thing is Stephen F. Austin. Like we said, SFA has to win next week against Lamar. They actually need to win big, and they need some other things that to happen to help them, because they're firmly a bubble team, and they're either going to be one of the last 4 in, and probably the last one in, or they're going to be one of the first ones out. They need some stuff to happen in the SoCon to reduce some of the at-large bids that might come from there. They would benefit from South Dakota State losing, I think, but I don't think South Dakota State's going to lose to UND. SFA needs help. Now, what's frustrating as an SFA fan is just what the team could have been this year if you think about the things that went against them. If when we played Texas Tech, if they had gotten that defensive pass interference call in the end zone, which the Big 12 refs missed and apologized for on Monday, could SFA have beat Texas Tech? Potentially. They would have had 4 more downs to try, right? The Sam Houston game, yes, Sam Houston played without Eric Schmid, and that we lost, SFA lost by 1, and after giving up points in the fourth quarter, and then the following week giving up 14 points early to Jacksonville State and not being able to fully recover from that. If these little things, or not little things, but if these things hadn't happened, SFA, they're literally 3 or 4 plays away from being 9-2 or even 10-1. So it's that as a fan is frustrating. But now, as as a unbiased person, SFA schedule does not help them get into the playoffs. Playing Lincoln, playing Mississippi Valley, and playing Tarleton doesn't help them get into the playoffs when it comes to their out-of-conference schedule. It's not strong enough. And like the Texas Tech loss isn't going to look bad. The St. Houston loss isn't going to look bad. It could be a quality loss if you want to use that phrase. Losing Jacksonville State looks bad, though. No offense, Brandon. But it looks bad when it comes to the resume. And so SFA needs a lot of help to get into the postseason. That's just what happens. They may be one of the teams that's McNeese or Lehigh or however you want to reference it, where they have a good record, but they still don't have the quality SRS, the quality resume to get into the playoffs. So Selection Sunday will be this coming Sunday. I recommend watching it. Got a couple more questions that I'll hit real quick. Brandon Owens, which, by the way, if you guys haven't checked out Cocky Nation, you absolutely should, as well as Around the A-Sun. Although I don't think Around the A-Sun will exist in the same form once Jacksonville State goes, unless Brandon Owens becomes a fan of another A-Sun team. But Cocky Nation could be one of the best Conference USA podcasts you'll get to listen to the next few years. So anyway, he said, can Frisco hurry up and get here? Totally agree. What matchup do you want to see in Frisco? I mean, I would like to see. Well, there's a couple, right? There's a couple that I think would be good. I think Montana State, North Dakota State would be one heck of a game. I think Montana State, Sam Houston State would be one heck of a game, and I think Sam Houston State, North Dakota State would be one heck of a game. Those are, I think, are the three most prone matches. The one happens in some way, shape, or form because they need that. We're playing Madden on rookie mode, sort of 70 to 63 game in the playoffs, and I'm hoping that somehow happens. I hope it does. I don't think it'll happen in Frisco because neither one of the teams have the defensive depth to get that far. I think when it comes to Frisco, it's probably going to be Montana State, Sam Houston State, but I could see North Dakota State, if they get on the same side of the bracket as Montana State, upsetting them. And then, but I don't think anybody on Sam Houston's side will have the balanced enough team to beat Sam Houston and Huntsville. So I think that's the matchups that we'll see, and I think they would all be really good, entertaining matchups out of those three. I mean, that's three. I mean, every FCS team that's in the playoff is going to, for the most part, going to have a quality game. But I mean, those are three top-notch teams to watch. So I would look forward to that as a fan. Of course, the SFA fan in me hopes that we get into the playoffs somehow and we just wreck shop and make it there, although we're probably not going to make the playoffs anyway. Let's see. What's this one? Does Dixie State have a leg up on Southern Utah right now in the WAC next year with SAU seeking a new coach? No, I don't think so yet. And the reason why is Dixie State's just not that good. Now, the experience that they got this year is going to help them immensely, but I still think that Southern Utah would absolutely own Dixie State, even with getting a new coach. I think getting a new coach is one of the things that's probably going to help Southern Utah succeed and become a better school, a better program. So I don't think having to get a new coach is going to hurt them, but it'll be exciting. Also, too, Dixie State next year will be Utah Tech. So, new name, new year could be really, really good. Let's see. We're about 22 minutes in. I didn't want to keep this one too long. I'll leave it up for a couple more questions, but I want to do a couple of shout outs before we get to the end of this. Not 100% sure if I'm going to do a show next week or not. I'm going to kind of play that one by ear. I mean, honestly, I can't devote a half hour to Sam Houston. And it's not for like or dislike of Sam Houston, but it's just that's going to be really boring just to talk about Sam Houston. Although somebody said to me, basically said, "What you can't support and be devoted to Sam." And I want to be like, well, Sam couldn't support or be devoted to the WAC either. Now could they? So, but we'll see how it goes. Maybe we'll get on and talk about the selections and what goes on. But that ties into what I want to bring up. Selection Sunday, there will be a show broadcast on this network by the boys who run the Sunday podcast. So it'll be Matt, Kyler, Jamie, and they're going to go through. They're going to have the selections show up, and they're going to go through and talk about the basic of analysis. I recommend checking out that show if you can. It's already scheduled on the YouTube page. You can get it. So if you don't like or subscribe to the YouTube page, you should, and then you'll get notified when it kicks off. I will be out of town, so I don't know if I'll be awake in time to watch the show, but I plan on at least following it and seeing what happens. But I highly recommend watching their Selection Sunday show and watching all the content that they do going into the playoffs. No. McNeese does not get anything from me. They've already ramrodded their way through a conference. They're not going to get their way with a podcast. Sorry. So anyway, lastly, one more shout out to the FCS Fans Nations group. First of all, thanks to the admins for allowing me to come on and put together the podcast for the WAC this year. I know it's been loosely put together based upon things that have happened in life this year. Plan on getting a little more structured next year. My counterpart Kyle, who has come on here a couple of times, he if you want to see his work, which is awesome work, and you're interested in college basketball, WAC Hoops Digest is his site. I might do some writing on there. I just can't decide what he asked me to, but I recommend giving him a follow and checking out his stuff. So let's see. We got one more question that popped up. Sam Houston's passing defense is ranked 101 out of 123 in the FCS compared to EWU's. So Sam Houston has struggled against the pass. That's their one thing. But what they have that helps them is their front seven. And their front seven, if Sam Houston were to play Eastern Washington, I think Sam Houston's front seven would give Eric Berrier a lot of fits and troubles. I don't know how much time he'd have to throw. I mean, it's one of those things that you look at. But also, too, on the flip side of that, Eastern Washington's passing defense is ranked 41st. Off the top of my head, I don't know what the rush defense is. And Sam Houston is not just a passing team. Sam Houston can run the ball. They can move the ball in lots of different ways. And you shut down Jaquez Ezzard. Well, that's great. They have Cody Crest, or they have Ife, or they have Ramon Jefferson, or they have they have other weapons on there. So I don't think you can just look at the actual statistics on this and say, hey, what would they do? I think also, too, Eastern Washington would have to come to Huntsville unless they meet up in Frisco. And I just don't think – I thought earlier this year Eastern Washington had the depth, had enough of a defense to protect their offense and make it to Frisco. I'm not so sure of that now after they played some folks. So that means if they were to play, they more than likely would have to play in Huntsville. And I don't think that would benefit Eastern Washington. So I don't know. Any given Saturday, anything can happen, but I think I would have to favor Sam Houston in that one. I would say probably by about 10 points. So, but we'll see, right? Because again, any given Saturday, anything can happen. I am quite reasonable. Thank you. Good looking, though. I don't know. I think it's the lighting in here. It's the mood lighting, because I don't have, again, old house. There's not actually an overhead light in that fan. So I have lamps in here. So it's just the mood lighting to get you in the mood for listening to my sweet dulcet tones as we go through this. But no, I appreciate the comment. I do try to be reasonable and try to be not about the teams. Now, it's really easy to come and just come in and it's in my nature to want to talk trash against like Sam Houston. But you can't argue with what they've become as a program. And I do, like I said last week, I do wish them the best when they make their jump. It sucks that the rivalry is going to be done until either SFA moves or Sam pays us to play them. That I, as a SFA fan, it kind of sucks that we no longer are playing our other rival, Northwestern State, because we changed conferences unless we get them scheduled out of conference games. So I feel like SFA is now on an island without a good rivalry game to bring in fans, and that really kind of sucks from a fan perspective. But wish, like I said, Sam Houston, wish you guys all the best of luck in FBS. So anyway, let's go. We're almost at 30 minutes. Let's go ahead and wrap this thing up. Anyway, I started to say this earlier before I saw some questions, but I want to give a big shout out to Matt and Kyler and Chris and Jamie and D-Law and all the admins who allowed me to put together this podcast this year. It's been great. We'll do it again next year. We'll hopefully, I want to get in more guests and more discussions. We had a great one with Ryan Ivey, had a great one with Jeff Hurd. I was trying to get the Dixie State AD on. Unfortunately that didn't happen, but we're going to try to bring in more of those next year. Great conversation. But thanks to those fellows for letting me do this this year. Also too, like I said earlier, if you haven't liked and subscribed this, you should, because you can check out Cocky Nation around the ASUN, or you can check out this jackwagon, Ben, as part of the B team. And yes, look at that logo. And too bad I ripped up the other one I had printed out, Ben. But you can check out the B team. You can check out all Jackrabbit Illustrated, all the great content on this channel. So that's it for me, guys. Have a great rest of your week. Enjoy Saturday. I will be interested to see what happens Sunday. Best of luck to all the teams who are trying to get in the playoffs. Congratulations to all those who've already got their auto bids. For Jamie Williams, I'm going to say the CAA stinks, but also James Madison's kind of reaping what they sowed. Anyway, that's it. Have a great night. Have a great week. We'll catch you guys later.